Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I feel the. Okay. I hear some background. I feel the excitement and the buzz and lots of interactions with each other. So. All right. Oh, excellent. Thank you, Claudia. Yay. I want to extend a very warm welcome and a good evening. And also would like to say welcome to the inaugural Ed Talks here, sponsored by the College of Education. So, I know that many of you know who I am, but just in case, I'm Frankie Santos La'anen, and I have the honor and the privilege of serving as the Dean of the College of Education. This is my third year here, and serving in sorry. Improvisation, that's what I learned in Glee Club, so. So I have the honor of serving as Dean. Early in 2023, when I stepped into the role, I always knew that I wanted to put together something like this, right? So it's an early conception, the idea of an Ed Talk. Many of you are probably familiar with TED Talks, so what I'm very thrilled about is that we are here today, and now we're launching this. And what I can say to you is this is not just the inaugural, but certainly this will be an annual event that I look forward to in the very near future. So the goal of the Ed Talks is to bring a very diverse group of folks who are here tonight. I've met some of you, and I look forward to meeting many of you throughout the evening. So we've got university faculty. Can we have, if you don't mind, colleagues who are faculty in the College of Education, just stand so folks know who you are. Our faculty in the College of Education, give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Folks from the community members, donors, and other stakeholders, please rise, and we'd like to recognize you as well, and thank you for being here. I know that you're here because we all care deeply about education. I'm holding this magazine. If you have not seen this out in the outside of the museum, I'm very proud of this publication, and I want to recognize Rachel Walker, who's here. Rachel, could you stand? Rachel was a creative genius who worked very closely with Jane, myself, my colleagues on the development team in highlighting and also celebrating our 175th anniversary. For those of you who may not know, the University of Utah was founded in 1850, and we were called the University of Deseret. That history was about preparing, it was a normal school preparing teachers. So we, the College of Education, take great pride in celebrating the history, but also knowing that the history of the University of Utah started as the mission of preparing teachers. For those of you who may not know, I'd like to just share this with you. The mission of the College of Education transforms educational knowledge, practice, and outcomes through cutting-edge research, deep community partnerships, and innovative approaches to teaching, learning, and training. Our vision is to be a leading college of education that addresses educational challenges and as a trusted partner in innovation, development, growth, and societal impact. We're here because we have faculty who are presenting posters out there. I'll make some comments in just a moment, as well as our Ed Talkers. That's a new term that I came with, Ed Talkers. What I'm so proud of as the Dean is that I get to showcase and really just celebrate the work of our faculty. Our faculty are nationally and internationally renowned. And for that, I'm very proud. And one of the things that I think about, and is important to understand, is that our faculty is engaged in cutting-edge research across many areas of education. with the goal of investigating and exploring grand challenges, right? Whether that's in the K-12 space, in higher education, out in the community, whether it's on topics related to school mental health, inclusive education, special education, the list goes on. You will hear a diverse set of research tonight, and I'm very, very excited about that. Our commitment as a college of education is we don't just engage in rigorous research, but it's also about what do we do with that research, right? And our commitment is that we disseminate the research in very different ways. And this is one of the mediums that we are doing, right? Because we write journal articles, right? And that's important. We write other op-ed pieces. But one of the things that is important is how do we translate that research so that we truly can understand how the research informs practice and policy. What we care about is, as scholars and as leaders in the college, is we want to know that schools are being transformed with regard to supporting the success of students, diverse learners, right? And so we're guided by the community relevance of our research, real-world impact, and the so what question. I know my faculty and our graduate students know this as well. Actually, let me just pause for a minute. I know I met some graduate students. Can I ask our graduate students to rise and be recognized? Because I know some of you are here, and let's give everyone a round of applause. Thank you. I know we have some who are also going to be graduating next Friday, so looking forward to seeing you across the stage. So really it's about how do we take that research and how does it inform policy and practice. It also is when we talk about how we understand President Randall's Impact 2030, his expectation is that the University of Utah and that our college is part of how President Randall and other leaders are positioning the University of Utah to be a top 10 research university with unsurpassed societal impact. I believe that not just as in my role, but the work that my faculty are doing and our students are in fact contributing and advancing that. And that what we do is in fact societal impact here in Utah, across the state, across the nation, and certainly across the world. So some of the themes tonight that you'll hear in the Ed Talks include access to education, college and prison, early relational health, community-led education efforts, tribal school partnerships, climate education, and future-focused learning. This event would not have been possible without a team of incredible people. So I want to thank our Ed Talk faculty members for your participation today. Our poster presentations, presenters who are here, but I'll say a little bit more about that in just a moment. And I want to recognize Dr. David Stroop, Sophia, Kate, Jim, and the Dean's Office staff. So can you please rise and just be recognized? Thank you. In addition, I mean, what an incredible space, right, in terms of the setting, right? So I'm very excited to be here. I want to thank our colleagues here at the Natural History Museum of Utah. And of course, we want to acknowledge our community partners and supporters. So later in the program, and you'll see this in your program booklet, there will be a Q&A after the Ed Talks. So I encourage all of you to engage with our presenters with your questions, comments, reactions. And then, of course, after the event, we'll have another reception and more time to engage with others. So in addition to the Ed Talks, I want to make sure that folks know that there are the poster presentations that are outside. And I want to say a few words about that. I also want to thank and recognize our faculty colleagues. So I want to recognize Dr. Christy Austin and Dr. Catherine O'Donnell from the Educational Psychology for your posters, so thank you. From Educational Leadership and Policy, Dr. Kathleen Strickland-Cohen from Special Education, thank you. Dr. Lauren Barth-Cohen, Dr. Lynne Zummo, Sarah Braden, and Adrian Adams, thank you for your contributions. Dr. Samantha Ross Sitker from Special Education, yes. Educational Psychology, thank you, and Dr. Rita Gupta in Urban Institute for Teacher Education. I saw that. So after the ed talks, you'll have an opportunity to peruse the poster, engage with the faculty researchers. So now I'm really excited to kick off the event, and you will hear from 5 outstanding faculty who will share their research. Our first ed talk speaker is Dr. Erin Castro, Associate Professor of Higher Education Administration in the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy. So welcome, Dr. Castro.
Can you all hear me? Yeah. Lovely. Thank you. Jim, we good?
Yep.
Okay. Hi. Huh? Sorry. All good. Tonight I am going to thread a delicate needle. I am going to advocate for prison education while not supporting the structures that produce it. This means that I'm not going to try to convince us with data, although a lot of it exists. I'm not going to walk us through, for example, that access to post-secondary education during incarceration radically reduces rates of re-imprisonment. And I'm actually not going to dwell on the moral argument, the imperative we have as free people sitting in this room, that we should frankly be appalled at the coordinated, well-funded extraction of our neighbors, of our loved ones, our future teachers, leaders, architects, artists, lovers, potentially, friends. Of course, all of this matters, but it's not why I'm here tonight. I believe everyone should support prison education because prisons don't do what we've been taught to believe that they do. And our collective indifference is what makes them thrive. In the US, prisons are a holding place for the people who we've failed. Housing the poor, the unhoused, the sick, the disabled, and particularly salient for this audience, the undereducated. But it would be inaccurate to say that prisons just contain inequality. They actually produce it, and it compounds over lifetimes and generations. And if you want to understand who isn't here, literally in this room, but also in the wider social, political, and economic life in the United States, go to prison. This is why prisons demand our attention. Now, I know what some of you are likely thinking, and it goes something like this. Erin, this sounds great in theory, but there are really dangerous people out there. People who do terrible, terrible things. And not only do they deserve to be locked up, our collective safety, our collective well-being depends on their removal. And I have to say, as a mother, this narrative strikes at the core of who I am. And so I don't dismiss that feeling. Am I just going through? Oh, sweet. Let's go, nope. We'll go here. And so I don't dismiss it. I want to be really clear about that. The prisons, jails, and detention centers like this one out in West Valley don't make us safer by any meaningful measure. And by us, I mean the collective us, not just those of us sitting in this room. Here we go. As an educator, I've spent almost 2 decades working inside prisons. And here's what I've learned. No amount of logic or data that I could present tonight fully shifts the feeling that we have about prisons. Because our beliefs about prisons aren't simply intellectual, they're embodied. We're socialized very early on to see prisons as necessary, inevitable, We're told to believe that there are good people and there are bad people. There are those who are deserving and those who are undeserving. Even toddlers understand the story of playing jail. We launched our on-site prison education program here at the University of Utah in 2017. Back then, in a tattered set of buildings alongside I-15, easy to overlook, easy to ignore. Today, it's a sprawling billion-dollar enterprise with $1.3 million additional funding allocated this legislative session, out by the airport, seen by a few, and largely ignored by all of us. To describe our prison education program as simply delivery of educational curriculum would be inaccurate. Prison education, when done well, transforms communities. And I don't mean the communities inside prisons, although that's important. It transforms campuses. It beckons us to come face to face with our own ignorance about what we believe to be true. That kind of prison education, the kind that I'm talking about, works against the very logics of punishment. And it attends to the deeply felt experiences of students. In our program, undergraduates, graduates, faculty, staff, volunteers move through a curated curriculum. They read key theoretical texts, and then we reflect together on how those ideals actually play out in practice. And we do this together, guided and often led by incarcerated students themselves. In this sense, the Prison Education Project is a place where students don't simply study inequality. We encounter it. Students learn what it means and what it takes, ultimately, to not turn away from that discomfort, to sit with the weight of complicated feelings, including our very own desires for retribution and what on earth we're supposed to do with them if we don't send people to prison. To walk out to the parking lot after class, late at night, and feel the dissonance in realizing that you get to leave. These moments matter. Embarking on new paths of knowing and being in the world is scary. It can mean unlearning what we've inherited as fact, and that feels like grief. And it's because it requires us to reconfigure our relationship with the world, with the people we love, mourning the loss of memories now corrupt by knowing differently. And it can feel like the unraveling of an entire belief system. And so, at the Prison Project here, we take this responsibility seriously. We ask students to consider, what do you do when your values are compromised? How do you act when others are depending on you? How do you speak when your heart rate is up and your voice shakes and you can feel the sweat in your palms? And then we practice it every week together. Because this is how people develop the habits necessary to change systems. The courage and confidence that comes from practice and, frankly, mistakes. And coming to the realization that working for social justice is perhaps best described as choosing between a bad option and a really, really bad. There are no neutral choices here. Everyone should support prison education because ignoring bias doesn't make it disappear. It just makes it easier to maintain. Prisons, despite their physical infrastructure, are within our influence. They are public institutions. We pay for them. We maintain them, even the private ones. And so unless we act differently, we also sanction them. So So instead, I offer prison education as choosing something harder. Choosing prison education as decarceral work, intentionally working against the logics and culture of punishment so many of us have been harmed by. Choosing to face the discomfort alongside students, and realizing the suffering made real by our collective indifference, and then teaching people the skills of how to interrupt that. We have to trust, and this is what we try to instill in our students, that on the other side of that grief, that harrowing discomfort, is a more humane future. But it's one that we have to get uncomfortable and work for. Thank you. Is everyone able to hear me? Excellent. Good to see everyone tonight. I'm Sondra Stegenga, and I'll be speaking on early relational health for educational impact. 1 million new neural connections is formed every second in the brain of a young child under age 3. It is through this neural network that we create these foundations in architecture for which all learning and development occur. This happens through critically important interactions between caregiver and child. What this might look like is a young child pointing at an object, the caregiver then looking at it too, and then naming the object, and then the two having back and forth interactions surrounding that toy, object, or play opportunity. This is really where early learning starts. Not only is that the foundation for trust, for interactions, for relationships, but also early motor development, early speech development, and cognition. Yet, when we talk about education, so often what we hear is K-12, maybe pre-K-12 once in a while, but rarely do we ever hear birth through 12 and beyond when we're thinking about our educational systems. I stand here before you today from a long journey. I started as a home visitor at age 18, and when I graduated from occupational therapy school, I started work in hospitals, inpatient rehabilitation, then schools, and eventually early intervention out in the communities, working with young children birth to age 3 and their families. It is here where I saw one tenet that really underlied so many of the needs: early relational health. What we need to be thinking about in this with early relational health is, where does all of this start? We need to be considering this from the very, very beginning for us to be able to better address it. Yet, this tends to be a topic that we often forget about, don't talk about often enough. It is often one of the most underfunded areas in education. In fact, early education is funded at only about 25% of what even K-12 is, and we know how underfunded that is. And so we need way more attention to this, both in our research as well as in our funding. Because of this, I've taken 3 distinct pathways to really focus in more on this early relational health. First, through a partnership with partners in Michigan, we've been looking at how we can improve early developmental screening. This is critically important because if we're able to identify needs sooner, we can match those needs with interventions and really improve that brain development. What we've been finding from this is, through some very simple strategies through our research, if you have clear agreements on what the roles are for who is doing what when you're thinking about early developmental screening, if you have good systems in place for data to identify when children are being missed and not receiving the supports that they should, we are able to better achieve these outcomes. Also, having a program champion to be able to really drive the initiative forward helps us to improve those screening rates significantly.
These are not cost-intensive interventions, but can have huge impact. Next, with another group out of the state of Oregon, we've been working to leverage the science of implementation to really work to scale up these interventions in real-world settings. Early relational health, infant mental health in these community-based settings is complex. And so we need to be thinking about more than if the intervention just works, but what strategies do you need to actually make sure that it happens in those community settings and it happens well and in a meaningful way to the community, to the families. And so we've been examining the factors that help to contribute to the increased adoption, use, and scale-up of those services. We have gone from only 2 areas throughout the state agreeing to adopt and then eventually use these infant mental health services to all areas throughout the state, now agreeing to use the services and excited to start to scale up. And all but 2 areas already starting to deliver those services. Next, we need to really be innovating new approaches to pre-service training. What we keep hearing about early relational health and infant mental health is providers were saying they were coming out of school not feeling prepared to help support these needs in early education settings. Whether it's interdisciplinary providers such as social workers or our early intervention, early childhood special educators, they all were saying they needed additional skills. And so through a collaborative approach across the College of Education and the College of Social Work here at the University of Utah, we've created an aligned specialized program focused on infant and early childhood mental health. So our graduates who are coming through Project iPad, they achieve not only their licensure either in social work or early intervention, early childhood special education, but they come out equipped with the skills and the competencies to also be able to apply for and get their endorsement in infant and early childhood mental health here in the state of Utah. It's built into what they do. It has been so exciting to see those graduates come through. We also made sure that we infused into this program competencies and added training experiences related to implementation science and leadership, because we know they need to not only go out and be able to provide these services, but disrupt and change the systems so that they can sustain within those systems and have impact. So, in conclusion, what I'd like to really say is I can't emphasize enough how important these early interactions are. We often take them for granted. They're in the small moments of life, but these are often the most scalable, adaptable, and feasible interventions that we can have. And through those interactions, we literally are building and changing brains. And so I challenge all of you today, when we think about that and that impact on education, to leave here today thinking about education starting at birth. And also, I challenge you to think about all the interactions that you have throughout your day. Every little moment, how do you seize on that? How do you make sure you don't miss that moment? Make every interaction impactful. What will you do today to build a brain?
All right, that's me. Hi, everyone. My name is Miguel Trujillo. Thank you for being here. I want you to know up front that I am not an expert in community. That's because nobody could be, because the word community means many different things to many different people. It's one of the beautiful and challenging dynamics when we're working with groups of people that may come with different backgrounds, values, and beliefs that may be incongruent with our own. However, when we can come together on a shared goal, regardless of the outcome, there is value in the process for everyone. I am fortunate enough to have a job where I get to work here at the College of Education and at University Neighborhood Partners, where I'm an associate director there. My office is out in the community, not here on campus. And I actually get the fortunate responsibility where I get to work with some wonderful people here. My role in partnership with the College of Education is to bring together faculty, community members, and students to work together to advance community-led projects. While this work has delivered some incredible outcomes, such as a new hospital being built in West Valley City, it is the process of how we engage that is truly important. Community members come to this work not to be studied, but to truly partner and lead efforts to create the change they want to see in their community. If we want our work to be sustainable, we need to be partnering with the people in the neighborhoods that have lived expertise in what is happening there every day. When I think of this work, I think of Abdirazak Ibrahim of the Somali Community Self-Management Agency, and I think of Coach Juan for Heartland Community for Youth and Families. These men teach me and others that to truly have impact, we must lead with love. They have worked for years, often without compensation, sharing their knowledge and expertise with those who will listen, and sometimes sharing with those who don't want to listen. By supporting their work, Abdirazak has fed thousands of families through a food pantry on the west side, and Coach Juan has helped hundreds of young people access their education and become leaders in their community. This is not to take credit for the work that they have done, because I'm sure they would have done this regardless of our support. Rather, our role as researchers is to effectively communicate, encourage, and provide resources to advance the work that is already happening in our communities. Our communities know what they need, and they will be responsible for their neighborhoods long after researchers are gone. While this work is incredibly important, it is also very difficult to do. It requires a lot of time, humility, and flexibility that is not always easy. We're taught as researchers to be the experts in the room, and while we often are in a particular area, we are not experts in the lived realities of others. That's why I'm so fortunate to be able to be here with many colleagues that understand we need to slow down and truly listen to our communities. At my Department of Education, Culture, and Society, I really appreciate Dr. Leticia Alvarez and her work working with the Utah Community Advocate Network, partnering with them for years to create a class where they work together with local family members and students to advance community-led projects. I really appreciate Dr. Jose Gutierrez, who's created a partnership with City Academy, families, and students to support an event where math is more accessible for everyone in our communities. Working with these individuals who slow down, listen, and know when community leads, we all benefit. And I know I should probably end with the title of my talk, as that makes for a nice full circle moment. However, those of us that work in community know things are not often as cut and dry. So instead, I'm going to leave you with this. I recently had the opportunity to work with the Karenni community on the refugee camps on the border of Thailand and Burma. As part of our work, we consult with the Karenni community to understand what they need and how we can best support them. This year, I happened to work with parents on family leadership. However, with the travel, the language barrier, and the cultural differences, I'm not exactly sure what I was able to actually get across to the parents in these camps. Regardless, though, they were so appreciative of our time there, just sitting with them, hearing their stories, and learning together. They remarked to us several times, please don't forget about us. I believe that part of my work and the privilege that I hold is being able to amplify the stories in our communities. It is through our shared stories, our shared histories, that we can help create a global community that we can all be proud of. I want to thank you all for being a part of our community here at the College of Education. I want to send a big thank you to our communities locally and abroad, for allowing us to play a part in your story. Thank you.
Wonderful. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. Okay. I saw a couple of books like that, not so much. So yep, yours was the look. Really? Okay. Well, thank you. It's hard to follow all these great talks, so if you just take what Dr. Trujillo said and then pretend I said it, we'll be fine. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my work here, but I want to start off with a clarification that while I'm the one speaking, the work for this project is a community-engaged research practice partnership. And so I'm speaking from that partnership, not for that partnership. If you haven't been, Fort Duchesne, Utah is about 2.5 hours from here between Roosevelt and Vernal. You got to go over the Wasatch and along the over Daniel Summit and past Strawberry and Starvation, and you get about every kind of weather that exists in Utah on that drive. And it's beautiful, and it reminds me of where I grew up. So I had to throw this up there. I grew up in and around the Northern Cheyenne Reservation in rural Montana. I'm in those pictures. It's like, where's Walter? But where's Warner? In the top one, I'm very small, I'm blonde. And in the lower one, I'm wearing an elf hat. But I'll tell you that these were formative memories for me, and they laid the foundation for what I believe about the importance of partnership between school and community, and the power of true collaboration and trust to overcome a wide variety of historical barriers. So the partnership that I'm talking about between the Ute Tribal Education Department, the University of Utah College of Education and Undergraduate Studies, and Eagle View Elementary in the Uinta School District is focused on a perennial problem, and that is a disparity in academic outcomes for tribal students. And that's not just a Utah issue. This mirrors national data. So this is national 8th grade NAEP achievement data. Many of you are familiar with that, with the nation's report card. And you'll see that the black bar represents national native proficiency in English and mathematics on the 8th grade. And the red bar is the general population of 8th graders. And this is about an 8 percentage point disparity. And I always put this out here because I think we have to ground ourselves in the fact that this is not a question of ability or innate intellectual development. It's a result of systems that are not serving a particular population well. But the good news is that systems can be changed. And the goal of our partnership is to figure out how. But the challenge for that is that trust is essential between the partners. And neither higher ed nor K-12 ed have a particularly great history of developing trust with tribal communities. And Dr. Trujillo mentioned, you've got to show up, you've got to be patient, you've got to take your time, you've got to be consistent. And all of that is absolutely true. You can't build trust overnight on the timeline of a semester or a grant cycle or anything of that nature. It takes long-term engagement. And we've worked on that significantly under the premise that the expertise that's truly needed here to address these issues is not coming from the university. The expertise is within the community. What we need to do is create the conditions to leverage that expertise and bring it to bear upon the problem. To do that, the community members need to come up with the questions. Data needs to be shared and interpreted together. And then decisions have to be made by consensus, even if consensus takes significant amounts of time and does not follow the timelines that researchers might like them to follow. So I'm just going to share one finding to come out of this. This is an ongoing project that has been going for 4 years, so summing it up in 5 minutes is probably not going to work very well. But one of our key findings from our engagement with members is that we're not even actually looking at we're looking at a symptom of the problem, but we're not actually looking at the problem. The problem is about belonging, which is a precursor to academic achievement. The students cannot perform, they can't learn to read, they can't learn mathematics if they don't feel like the school they're learning that in is one that they can belong to. And so much of our efforts have been about how do you increase that sense of belonging between institutions that have a long and antagonistic history. So some of the ways that we found, and I won't go into all of that, but are fundamentally you have to show up. You must be consistent. And then once you show up, you kind of have to shut up and listen, and then show up some more. While you make shared meaning and hold each other mutually accountable. This is our project team. And I'll just end by saying I'm deeply thankful for all of these individuals and for the opportunity to work with them on projects that are important. And I'll leave you with kind of a last phrase, which is that this type of research is not an intervention, it is a commitment, and one that we have to fulfill. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Lynne Zummo. Really nice to be here tonight. So, I probably don't have to tell anyone here this tonight, but we live in a world that can often feel rife with division. From what to do about the changing climate to personal health choices, Americans hold a wide range of views on science-related issues. As a science educator, I do research that asks, how can we design effective learning experiences about contentious, science-related issues that actually bring people together rather than deepen divisions? Much of that research that I do is right here at the Natural History Museum in Utah. For the past several years, I have collaborated with the exhibits team here to develop and study the exhibit that's just outside these doors, A Climate of Hope. Hopefully you see it. And a key underlying premise of A Climate of Hope is that the ways that we communicate about contentious issues, the specific words, phrases, and images we use, greatly influence how people make sense of and interpret and decide how they feel about those issues. And further, the ways that education and media have communicated about climate change over the past 3 decades has been largely unproductive, leaving people feeling helpless, hopeless, and more divided than ever. So in light of that history, A Climate of Hope attempts to reframe or offer what we call side door frames, alternative and new ways of talking, thinking, and communicating about contentious issues. Let me give you some examples. So instead of emphasizing fear and doom and despair, A Climate of Hope emphasizes rational hope, or the idea that yes, we are faced with this great challenge, and we are prepared and have the tools we need to implement solutions to give us a hopeful vision of the future. Instead of emphasizing sacrifice, or that we need to give things up to save ourselves, the exhibit emphasizes this frame that we call a better future, or what we have to gain from acting on climate. In this frame, it's not about avoiding catastrophe, it's about creating a better world than we have today. A better world with clear air, cleaner water, affordable energy, instead of emphasizing debate and division, the exhibit emphasizes community, our shared values, our common ground, what brings us together. And instead of emphasizing impacts on far-off places and faraway times, like the Arctic or 100 years from now, the exhibit is entirely grounded in Utah and entirely grounded in the here and now, featuring stories of real people in real places across Utah, and not just about how they're being impacted, but how communities are stepping up and taking action to create a better vision of the future. So, to understand the influence of these reframes on visitor learning, I conducted a major research project. And in this project, we set people up with video cameras and sent them through the exhibit and recorded all their conversations. So we got really close insight into what they were talking about and what they were doing. And what we did with this data is my team and I identified what we call side door moments. And side door moments were these really special, really powerful, important moments of learning in the exhibit, where we saw visitors taking up specific language, ideas, and messages from the exhibit and integrating that into their own conversations with each other. And we identified hundreds and hundreds of these side door moments across our data set. And after analyzing all of them, I can sort of sum it up in 3 main conclusions. One is that local framing, that Utah grounding, is really critical and essential to learning. We saw participants with wildly different views about climate change, leaving with shared understandings about how Utah's landscapes are changing and what people across the state are doing to deal with those changes. Our second main conclusion was that better future frame, it has a lot of potential. Specifically, it has potential to reduce social divisions around solutions to climate change. However, for that frame to be effective, it needs to be very well integrated with the local frame. So as participants engage with parts of the exhibit that emphasize that better future frame, as long as it was grounded in Utah, they got on board with solutions. And finally, probably our biggest conclusion from this study is that relationships are really key to social change and to reducing divisions. All of these side door moments that we cataloged and studied, they all happened socially. And that social interaction was especially important for groups in which the family or friends who were visiting, in which the individuals had very different views on climate change. Through experiencing these shared side door moments together, they could learn and take up key ideas and messages from the exhibit. So ultimately, what my research shows is that we can design ways of supporting effective learning around these tough, often divisive issues. By carefully considering the framing and the language choices that we make within these educational experiences, we can support learners with taking up the ideas that we want them to take up and building new ways of talking and thinking about these very tough issues. We can support learners with helping develop big, hopeful visions of the futures that they want. Thank you.
Right. Let's do this for a second. We're gonna set up some chairs here, and so I do science education and teacher education as well, so this would be a good time for me to clue you in that you could be thinking of a question now. This is good wait while we get this. So we'll have 5 to 10 minutes for a few questions, and then we will have more time outside to talk to the poster presenters and some of the other speakers, but if you can give your questions now.
Also, the bar closes at 8, so please continue to grab some drinks and food. We will probably be here till like 8:39. Reception will kind of continue on, but the bar does close at 8. So.
I had oversight. I want to recognize Professor Mary Burbank, who's also a poster representative.
I gave it to them to give them here.
Oh.
So anyone have any questions in the audience? I have a microphone. I'll come to you. Yes, Dr. Benyon?
Disseminating the importance of this, if the legislature came down, that critical point at birth, even having a healthy pregnancy makes a difference. So I'm just wondering, from a practical standpoint, are there ways of raising the awareness of parents and policymakers on those critical first years?
What an excellent question. I really appreciate you bringing this forward.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yes. So what are some ways that we can really continue to bring forward the need for this education beginning at birth? And I really appreciate this because this has been the question that has been asked over decades, I'll say. Harvard University, the Center on the Developing Child, has actually done some good collaborative work with Frameworks Institute to really look at how we're messaging about early interactions. And they've developed some very good frameworks for how we do that and talk about the back and forth interactions as a serve and return. So that A, there's ways that we can talk about this that are better received. B, to all of my collaborators and presenters here tonight, it really is about relationships. We need to be out in the community, advocating, getting involved. I've had the opportunity to serve on our state interagency coordinating council alongside of families, other community members to really advocate for these services. So it goes way beyond our work. We need to be communicating in any way that we can and also conducting research surrounding the ways that we do our science communication about these youngest of ages. So get involved, advocate, and then really be thoughtful about a science-based way to best message this so that people understand and receive it well. Thank you so much for your question.
So, Lynn, I'm going to ask a question for you, which is, I think your takeaway points really sort of help us understand how we might set up these side doors that people can go through. I think we're all particularly interested in these kinds of opportunities to come together during sort of contentious times. I wonder in your research if there's insights or even speculation you might have about what makes people go through those side doors versus kind of ignore them. It feels like you could set up those opportunities, that people might not spontaneously take you up on them. I wonder if you have some thoughts on how to help people sort of take you up on that offer to come together and take advantage of those side doors.
Yeah, I think it really goes back to relationships. So I can give you a great example that I feel like it's to your point. There was this couple who were participants in the study. They were married, they were in their 60s. They owned a farm in rural Utah and were visiting here. And they came in with very different views about climate change. So the woman was very concerned, and her husband was dismissive, skeptical of it. And they were having a bad time, I'd say, in the exhibit. However, she did some remarkable moves where she would point something out that she thought was, or assumed she thought was relevant to him, and kind of invite him in conversation. And she did that repeatedly. And eventually it worked. And I think because she did it in this very artful way of connecting the material to their own lives. So she pointed out there's a graph on this side that shows the number of days above 100 degrees and how it's dramatically increased in the past 30 years. She said, wow, look at this. This is amazing. And he finally said, yeah, that's why we can't grow this one type of plant anymore. And then when they were over by the map in the solutions area of the exhibit that shows renewable energy projects across Utah, she pointed a few things out. She pointed out places where they had been to and said, hey, do you remember this? Isn't this great? So without her, he would have hated this exhibit. But thank goodness for Dorothy, our participant, her student, and she really brought him in. And so I think it takes that work of like knowing that you know maybe somebody you care about doesn't agree with you, but being willing to show them the side door and keep trying within that trusted relationship. Thanks, Kristen.
First, can I just say I've been wanting to meet you for forever, Dr. Castro. I've been like following you on LinkedIn for some time. So it's great to hear you speak and like see you here in person. So I've been reflecting on the idea of a future without prisons. From your perspective, what would need to be fundamentally changed in society for that to become realistic, and what would replace prisons in addressing harm and justice?
How much time?
It keeps me up at night, like,
No, yeah, no,
you
it's
know.
a worthwhile question to keep you up at night. I don't have an answer for the second part of that question. I was never really invited to think about prisons in a meaningful way until graduate school. And I still don't think I've had enough time or experience to offer some kind of expert advice or some kind of, something that I feel confident in. But what I can say, and especially, the order of this is so interesting, because if we actually did what Sondra was suggesting, we wouldn't have to have prison education. And I think I say this all the time, and our director of prison education isn't here, thankfully, but if you have the money for systems change, invest it in early childhood, invest it in mothers, invest it in daycares, invest it in reproductive health. And it's a bold land, for sure, but I think one of the biggest challenges that we encounter with just students here on campus, let's say, who are interested and want to do something but they're not quite sure what to do, is that they've never been seriously asked to consider what that world would look like. And it's a tragedy, frankly, because then we don't have any idea, any imagination of what could be otherwise. And so we spend a lot of time just trying to educate people at the University of Utah who, for whom prison is not a routine feature of life. It's a privileged space. And that work is imperfect, for sure. But I think the more that you can, I'm like now wanting to recruit you for, I was gonna say, what are we doing after this? But they keep me up at night too. I'm so sorry that I don't have a better answer, but I will say that ignoring it is not what we should be doing if we care about equity.
Dr. Trujillo, this is for you. Everybody is very excited about the hospital, anybody that you talk to, and it definitely changes the footprint of the university in West Valley. And now I see it's sort of attracting all sorts of efforts in the West Valley community and other surrounding communities. So everybody wants to help. Everybody's well-intended. And the goal is, as you've stated, to go in and lift up the community together so that they become the leaders, etc. You gave us some really good points to think about. As if you were surrounded by a group of well-meaning people who want to come do this work, what advice would you give them to make it stick and sustainable?
That's a great question. Since that's something that I think we're constantly facing every project and every time we work with people, particularly here in higher ed. I think you mentioned that our timelines often don't match up with community, right? Like we have deadlines here. The semester ends in 16 weeks, right? But these projects are going to be ongoing and continual. So what I would suggest to folks is really, at least to start out with, is just get to know people, right? Like if you do your best to just be, like forget your titles, right? Forget you're a professor, forget that you have to come in and do this thing. Your agenda is really getting to know one another. It's getting to understand who each other are, getting to know our values, and then moving forward from there. I think it is a little abstract for some people too, right? When we talk like that. It's abstract for me too when I first started this work. But to really, I think we've touched on again and again the power of relationships throughout this process, right? And that is really what is going to move this work forward, is developing those. And so just again, encouraging folks to just listen, just understand each other. And the work will happen, right? It's going to be there. Stuff's going to happen on campus, right? Whether we want it to or not, things are going to happen. But hopefully, let's bring in these relationships and these people to support the work we're doing, and they can lead through this relationship building. So, again, sorry I can't be more direct. It always depends too. That's one of the challenges of this work as well. But that's where I would start. Thank you for the question.
Maybe let's do one more.
One more. I was thinking the same thing. Okay.
I like that there's so many
There's
questions.
so many hands up. Okay. All right. It's between Holly and Sandy. And you had a question. So you went through.
We were trying to,
So, I actually have two questions. They're really short, so maybe there's still time for two more. Just really quick follow-up for Lynne. Sorry, Miguel. For Lynne, I'm just curious, these slide door conversations, did they know that they were taking part in this research?
Yes. So before, we recruited them for the front interest of the museum and offered them free admission in exchange for participating. And then they read all their IRB forms and we talked to them. So they knew.
And then also for you, Sondra, just having worked in early intervention and of course connecting with the out-of-state early intervention agency, are you also coordinating with the Baby Lunch programs here at
I am, absolutely. I work closely with Lisa Davenport, and that's that interagency coordinating council that I was talking about. I'm so grateful to have relationships with them.
I used to work for DDI Bannon for a long time.
Awesome. Fantastic. I'd love to talk further. Thank you.
What a great transition into talking further. So let's give everyone a round of applause. And as a reminder, sub-use in the bar closes at 8.
Yes.
15 minutes.
Okay, so there's that. There's also the posters out in Lynne's exhibit as well. Please go visit those and continue the conversations. And thank you for coming. This is really meaningful for us to be able to speak with you. And so let's take the conversation out.